Welcome to another episode of Tools, Talents, and Techniques. I'm your host, Dustin Sutton, and today I am honored to welcome to the show Mr. Marty Gorsich. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dustin. Excited to be here.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun. And so before we really start going into the whole journey of how you got there, could you just briefly say who you are and a little bit about what you currently do?
Well, in my present job, CEO of the Century Club of San Diego. We're the nonprofit host org of the Farmers Insurance Open, which is the PGA Tour's annual event in San Diego at Torrey Pines each year. I also have a consulting company on the side, and we are involved in various projects, trying to just help with the knowledge I've picked up over the years, or maybe to help people not make the mistakes I've made and seen made over the years as they look to tackle the challenges they're all facing in the event space.
And so for those who are not familiar with golf that are listeners, and I know many of you are, the Farmers Open is a big one. It's a major tournament every year, and it's one of the biggest events in San Diego. Could you just talk a little bit more about what this tournament is?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's one of the premier stops on the tour, and that's not specific to even our leadership in the operation, but it's Torrey Pines. It's reputationally one of the toughest courses out there. There's no coincidence hosted 2 U.S. Opens, and always looks to get a very strong field. And as you look at these golfers as individual competitors, they want to test themselves against the best, and they want to play the places that reputationally speak to them being the best. And Torrey Pines is one of those spots. So you go win a tournament at a lot of courses, and it's a great badge of honor. But you go out and say, "Oh, I won a tournament at Torrey. I slayed the dragon at Torrey Pines." That's a big deal. You look at who our winners have been. I mean, obviously Tiger 7 times with the PGA Tour, and then obviously his major U.S. Open championship. Phil Mickelson, but even as you go on to the John Rahms and the Snedekers and the Days, it's not for the faint of heart. So because of that, it's always been known as a great and challenging course. Then you take the majestic views, the fact that we're on international TV at a time where most of the U.S. is under snow, and everybody watches these blimp shots and wants to experience it and be out at it. It's grown to a place where it's considered a preeminent stop. So we're all very blessed as the Century Club to be able to be a part of operating it. And then one of the side effects of performing those duties is being a nonprofit. We can use the financial and other benefits of operating the event to make our community better in a lot of different ways.
And that's one of the things we spoke about before, and the importance of giving back to the community, and how that is really one of the major points of what you're doing and the focal points of what you're doing. And I want to talk about all of these things. And I have a lot of questions for you. But before we go into all of that, could you talk a little bit about Marty's origin story? How did you start out? And I know you worked in sales and other sports, but where did Marty the person, where did you begin?
You know, I do a lot of mentoring, and I talk to kids a lot about this, right? And knowing what you want to do. I'm hoping to figure that out one day. But I keep finding cool stuff along the way. I was, in high school, I played volleyball. I got into helping the women's team a little bit because I really respected one of the coaches, and he was kind of a mentor of mine. Kind of played a manager role pretty soon, was kind of an assistant coach, and that led to me helping kind of coach their program there as I went on to junior college. I ended up coaching the women's team there. That's what actually kept me with the junior college program, and ended up going on to UC Santa Barbara, focused on coaching, and was coaching with the women's team there. And as I was wrapping up my college career, I started talking to the Olympic coaches and felt like I knew where I was headed. Had a discussion with my dad, and parental mentorship's always a weird thing because he probably said lots of great things that just didn't stick, as often seems to happen with me to my son. But he did talk to me at that point about ceilings and professional ceilings, and that I was 22 years old. And in talking to the Olympic coaches, as amazing as it was, in that particular profession, I was starting to almost rub my head against the ceiling of where I could go. And he just kind of said, "Hey, are you sure this is what you want to do for the next 40 years? Because I have a feeling if it is, it's going to look pretty much the same as far as what you have the option to go do." He said, "You could always step away and explore something else. And with your background, you could easily jump back into this." And it ticked at me a little bit. And I just didn't know what else. I never really had thought about what else. I decided I did want to get back home to Santa Barbara. And the only two things that really always stood out in my mind were the Padres and the Chargers. And wouldn't it be cool to work for my hometown teams that I had always been so passionate about? And so I started folding T-shirts in the Padres team shop. As I mentor today, I tell a lot of the kids in the sports management programs, I use my diploma as my folding square, and humbly folded my T-shirts around that diploma. But, it came down to getting to know people there, working hard, and being noticed, and was able to kind of climb the ladder, start closing the shop quickly. And as execs came in with their lanyards on, learning their names and welcoming them when they came, they'd seek me out because they knew I'd help them quickly and get them in and out fast. And ended up with an internship. Option offered 4 different internships, and I had no idea at the time what corporate partnerships versus community affairs versus marketing was. And I settled in corporate sponsorships, corporate partnerships, and grew my career in that space. Ended up a 14-year run with the Padres doing sponsorships, later premium seating, a lot of the corporate related things, and learned a lot about myself, what my strengths were, what traits came easily to me, also what things maybe I didn't love or didn't come easily for me. Had an opportunity to then move up to Portland and move into the NBA. And they have different rights there. Their radio rights, their TV rights, a different market. Had a great experience up there. Really enjoyed my time in the NBA. And then had an opportunity with my young son to get back to San Diego. He's the only grandchild on either side. So I feel like I didn't have a lot of vote in this one. And came back to what I, at the time, probably wasn't even convinced was me. I'd always been a team sports guy, and it was going to be to get involved with a one-time-a-year professional golf tournament. I didn't play a ton of golf, but I quickly reflected and realized I didn't play a ton of basketball, and I didn't play a ton of baseball when I worked there either. It was really in the sports and entertainment business, and what the actual sport was the backdrop. I wasn't a general manager. I wasn't a coach. In each place, I was focused on guest experience, helping companies, if they were the advertisers or sponsors or hospitality buyers, utilize our assets to drive their business objectives. So once you really got to the thing behind the thing, it was very relatable. And there was something to be said with a one-time-a-year major event where the scope was so large, internationally broadcast, all that goes into building it from scratch every year instead of having a brick-and-mortar facility. You really got to apply a lot of the things you learned over the years and get your hands deep into the clay. And really also, when you had an idea or wanted to do something or try something, you could effectively change immediately. Where when you were with a team, it was a really big organization. It was a pretty well-oiled machine. So you didn't have as much opportunity to make giant wholesale changes that you might have believed in wholly, where with this, we were able to year to year tear it down and build it back up different and better, and survey and learn and listen to people and find new ways to make it better. And so I've spent the last 13 years doing my best to make it better.
You touched on a lot of things in your journey, and thank you for sharing that. But there's the things that I want to put a pin in and elaborate on, because I do see the thread of how this can help with your development as a person, as a professional, as an executive. You mentioned earlier on, and some of the things that your father was telling you, and you weren't sure exactly what you wanted to do. Were there other people in your life too that you saw as mentors or coaches, or who else was helping you formulate how you make decisions as you were growing up?
There were various folks. It started with some folks in that volleyball space, right? Sometimes mentors don't pick you, they find you. And it's are you willing and open to what they have to offer and bring? And I find that even when I'm doing the same thing, I can typically tell when somebody's just looking for a quick piece of advice or hopeful to cut a corner to get somewhere, or if somebody actually finds value in what myself or someone else might bring their way. As I went along, I'd say there's many people I learned from, and honestly, sometimes there's what I call reverse mentorship. People learn from you. There's also what I call opposite internship. You actually learn from watching some people what you don't want to do and what you don't want to be. They weren't intending to be a mentor, but in some ways you watch it and you're like, I don't want to be that way or that person, or even I don't want to work in that space or anything like that. So, I had various folks who I picked up a lot of great knowledge from, but I also had a chance to watch some things in my young career and say, you know what, if I get a chance to do that, I'm going to do it differently. And that's okay too. You really want to have all sides of that to really build up a more robust view of how you want to proceed with the choices you make.
And you also mentioned when you were using your diploma as your folding board, when you think back on that time, and you joke about it, but I mean, I'll say this from my experience, starting out and cutting my teeth and becoming a young professional at one point, there was a sense of frustration where I was like, I think I could do more than this, but also I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Was there a sense of frustration there? Like, how did you go about handling that navigation?
Yeah, and you said it, right? You're sitting there going, having your moments. You're always fighting that angel and devil on your shoulders of, I want more, I need more, I can do more, let me run. And then other times pulling back and, you've got to bide your time or learn the lessons so you can apply what you've learned more effectively towards what you're trying to do. I was in that store and I wasn't sure if things were going to work out for me. I started writing letters to the team president with ideas and eventually got me called into the front office, I think maybe to make the letters stop. But, he had them on his desk and I respect, that was Larry Lucchino. He talked about some of the ideas and the things that I said and he liked a few of them and he had me go sit with two other people. And, you got to make your luck sometimes. One of the reasons I'm so pro mentorship is I didn't have a lot of access to it. And as I tried to make those decisions or tried to break into sports or try to learn the way, I didn't have a lot of places to go. My folks were amazing, but they were teachers, they were in education. They didn't have connections into the space. They didn't have experience directly in that space. So I had to kind of navigate a lot of this stuff by feel, take a little bit slower path. I was much more the tortoise than the hare as I kind of worked my way through. But the fundamentals they did instill in me that helped push through were the work ethic, the drive, the attention to detail. And you don't always appreciate those things going in. I think a lot of us grew up in a time where everybody kind of had to do that. We all wrote thank you notes and we all had chores and we all said, yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. That's not as inherent in this day and age. Those are almost differentiators for a lot of young people trying to break in. Whereas I think in a previous day, those were the expecteds. And if you didn't have those things, you had no chance. So, leaning in, folding those t-shirts, trying to always do it right, trying to have that work ethic. You don't complain. You show up ready to roll. That was stuff, I learned doing some things that my dad had me doing. I think about the chores and you felt like you had it pretty rough growing up, right? With the lawns and the gardening and the dishes and all the things that now, I even look at myself as a father, right? I zero-scape my yard and got a dishwasher and the housekeeper comes and I'm like, where are those things to make my son learn that kind of drive and work ethic that I think a lot of us cut our teeth on?
And you mentioned about being in the office and being seen, writing those letters, having them be able to see you as a resource and be around. And for me, a lot of that is attitude, right? I mean, you talk about activity and doing things and being proactive, but it sounds like attitude and being positive, plays a big part of this.
Yeah, again, you're going to have those voices, those thoughts that creep out there, right? A degree of self-belief. If you're going to go seek out leadership or mentorship to get around people, if you're a sponge, if you take it in, they will give you more. People like to talk about themselves. They like to feel valued. And no matter how far somebody might be up above you, I talk about this with folks all the time. I just went through an exercise with my teenage son. They don't want to go into LinkedIn because they're intimidated. But you get them to go in and they spend a couple sentences saying, I really expect your career path. I'd love if I could ever get a few minutes of your time to learn about how you did as I apply that to my own journey. Kids are shocked. by how much feedback they get from people they thought they'd never get in front of, because you're not trying to sell them anything. You're not asking for copious amounts of their time. You're not asking for a job. You're just simply asking them to talk about themselves a little bit, and that you find value in their challenges and their learnings that you might apply to make your life better. It's something that I highly encourage people do and to seek out, and you're going to find a lot of people willing to do it.
You just encapsulated this entire podcast in those last sentences, because really that's what I'm doing. Like I like to interview people that I respect, that I look up to, that I wonder, number one, I really like how you, not just you, but like most of my guests, I'm like, I want to know how you got there, how you did this. I am impressed. And I figure if I want to learn, then maybe I can help provide value to other people who would also benefit from hearing this information. So yeah, thank you for stating that, because that's basically it in a nutshell. I want to talk about the thread of the sports and the things that you've learned from volleyball, and football, baseball, basketball, the NBA. Was there something that in all those experiences that you were like, okay, I know there's something here, and I love these parts of it, and I'm going to figure this out, and it's going to be in sports? Was there a moment that it really, like, this is going to be me, this is what I'm going to do?
It's interesting. I was just talking to somebody today about, do I really work in sports? You can get pigeonholed, but again, I'm not a coach. I'm not a general manager. The things inherently that I'm doing on a daily basis goes back to what first got me into the volleyball coaching side, right? You're motivating others, teamwork, and applying hard work towards a greater goal. Winning isn't just on the field. Winning can be defined as so many things, achieving goals, right? The reason I've been able to, quote unquote, move between sports so easily is because it really didn't matter what shape the ball was, or if you hit it with a racket or your foot. It was about the core things. Talking to a client, they didn't need to do a sponsorship with a baseball team. They had a product that they wanted to get exposure and drive brand consideration and get people to purchase, or they had clients that they wanted to get in front of and spend time to retain their business, grow their business, or attract new business, right? Those are the things behind the things and the fundamentals. It was understanding how to utilize what our team had to offer to drive those interests. As I think about the farmers coming up, I'm not sitting here every day talking about what golfers we're going to have, because that, to a degree, will take care of itself. I'm thinking about, we added more of the VVIP restrooms because the ladies in the surveys over and over are the first ones to say, I will come and I'll stay longer if you give me a quality restroom experience. Well, you know what guys like? Guys like girls to be out there. So if I can make sure I can nail that, I can nail the next thing. We're thinking about, phone calls with Uber and SDPD to talk about traffic inflow and outflow. Because I think for all of us, if I were to invite you right now to a concert, your first thought is probably, where is it? How am I going to get there? How am I going to get home? What's that logistical journey going to be? Not do I want to be sitting in the seats watching the show? That's all fun. How long is it going to take me to get there? How am I going to get back? All of those things. A lot of that is what is, behind what we're doing with these events and with sports and with teams. And so many of these jobs with teams or in sports still really are about the entertainment side of it, the entertainment dollar, and the experience or the goals or objectives of your participants, whether those be sponsors, whether those be fans, whether it be, the community at large. So back to your question of what really caught me, I think it's just that feeling of applying the traits and the things that come easily to you, those working well in an environment that has energy to it. It makes you feel fulfilled. I think a lot of folks say they want to work in sports because they don't know what they want to do, but they like sports, so they assume just going there, it's going to be great. There's a lot of really bad jobs in sports. Culture can be poor, hours can be long, pay can be low. At the end of the day, the person, what they really says, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I want to wake up on Monday excited to go in, not be counting the days down till the weekend gets there. I don't know that I've worked a day in my life. I sure don't keep track of what day of the week it is or when certain things are or aren't, because I enjoy what I do. And I think that's really the quest. We all have 24 hours in a day. We all decide how we're going to spend it. spending it in the most fulfilling way possible is going to make your life richer.
I love that. And I love that, especially focusing on fulfillment. And I have these conversations about success versus fulfillment, and I'll take fulfillment every day of the week.
So
Success.
I created a chart with our team about 8 years ago. We were talking to different employees about what was important to them and what they needed. And I was just hearing a lot of conflict almost in what they said was important, but what their actions said, or sometimes maybe what they thought was important because people told them it should be. We all grow up thinking that our life steps are, where are you going to go to school? What are you going to major in? When are you going to get a job? When are you going to engage? When are you going to get married? We're going to like, those are check boxes. But I took 10 fundamental things that revolved around work and wrote those, called them the 10 things, what's important now. And the real key was you had to list these and place them in order 1 through 10. And so I think we all start our career, or many of us, numbers 1 and 2 are going to be financial compensation and title, because we learned that those are these measuring sticks, or these are the things that are going to make us happy. And things like culture and recognition and doing meaningful work, or having flexibility at work to put into others, whether it's your kids or coaching or whatever it is, right? We call it work-life balance now. Those things you don't even know what they are because you don't have a life experience to know. But as you go through your journey, those numbers start moving around in order when you have to place them as far as what's most important. You work in a toxic environment, you better believe culture starts moving up your list, right? You are someone who's wired where recognition is important. You're going to thrive in a place where there's a degree of that. Whereas there's other folks who that isn't as important to, and so they don't crave it the same way. And so in creating this, I was able to really understand our staff and our people much better. And it told me that some were nailing it. Some we needed to provide them certain things differently to help them thrive. And some others, their long-term best interests probably lied beyond us because we were a small shop and a small entity. And as I've watched people evolve their lists over time, as they've had kids or their roles have changed or other things have gone on, it's really interesting to see how, to your point, we all grow. And that fulfillment comes in a lot of different forms, and it looks very different for us at different points in our lives.
So along that line, and what you just mentioned before about polling and what the ladies had to say and what they wanted, how important is that to you, and how do you go about not capturing, that's probably a bad word. How do you collect that data, and how do you process that information? Because you have to see it on all different sides here, from your employees, the people that are attending the event, from all parties. Is there a process by which you go and collect that data and process
100%.
it?
100%. And I mean, you kind of touched on two different things, right? The broader question is, don't ask it if you can't handle the answer. And so don't survey for it if you're not willing to do something about what you hear, whether that's a staffer or whether that's the general public or whether that's in your personal relationship and asking a spouse or a friend. If you want to gain self-awareness or professional awareness, you can get those things, but it comes through surveying and learning. So specific to the tournament, yeah, if we're going to ask questions, and especially you can just ask, how happy were you at the tournament 1 through 10? Great. You didn't learn anything with that. Even if you found out people weren't that happy, you don't know how to do anything about it. But if you're going to ask questions about price points, or if you're going to ask questions about, the food experience or what they want more of or less of, you want to be intentional with those questions. You want to ask things that you have the chance to maybe grow upon. And the challenge of having a once annual event is you better get it right, because if you miss, you have to wait 365 degrees. I don't get to wait and do it again next homestand. You want to do all this fresh on their mind, get what you can, and then try to put some new things, into motion for that next year's event. Hope you nail those, or you're waiting a whole nother year when you rebuild this thing and do it again.
The overarching theme here I'm feeling is it's leadership. And I had a conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about an admiral on a ship. And I was like, man, it must be so stressful at some point, because I know people that are, high level and executives that you may have to, I would think, or a lot of people may imagine that you have to know a little bit about everything. And he responded to me, he's like, that's not necessarily the case. You have to know how to lead. You have to know how to trust people and what's important. And you got to let go at some point and trust the people that you put in the right place. And I thought that was so impactful for me to hear. And even though maybe I probably heard it in a different way at another time, but thinking of it in that manner really shed a light on, it's like, man, leadership is not having to know all the logistics of everything, but it's leading and trusting yourself and trusting the people you put around you.
Yeah, I mean, leadership's
I'm hearing that a lot out of what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, leadership's complex, right? Leadership first ties into you, because you can't just go be a servant leader if you're not wired that way, or you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses, right? And if you're a control freak or you're not, or what do you know a lot about and what don't you know a lot about, because you may lean in areas you're versed and know you need really strong people to cover the holes, right? It's a little like surveying. I don't need to know what I'm good at. I need to know what I'm bad at more than anything, because the good's going to come naturally and it's going to happen. I want to make sure I've got my back door covered. I want to make sure the things I'm not strong at, I've got the right people in place for. As you look at then evolving as a leader, before we just fall into categories of certain things, you've got to look at your team as a whole. I heard Herm Edwards once talk about, when I look at my team, I have to treat them all fairly. It doesn't mean I have to treat them all the same. And I think that's a very good way to look at it. I've got some very seasoned employees who've earned their stripes, and you give them a lot of space. I've got some employees, back to that survey, who need more recognition. So being a little more tuned into what they're doing isn't about micromanaging. It's knowing enough that I can give them those certain kudos and props that they need to be the best version of themselves from time to time. I've got other folks who do best when I kind of just stay back. They'll come to me when needed. Others aren't always going to come to me, so I need to know when to go to them, right? So if you're able to find that balance across everyone, there's also a lot of talk of servant leadership. I think it's great and admirable. I do quite a bit of it, but there's also times you do need to take the wheel. And to know when those times are, everybody wants to be in charge until that moment where there's real boss work to do. And everybody's like, "Ooh, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that," right? That's really when leadership gets tested, is when you do have to lead. You don't have to be a leader every day, all day long. You just don't. If you've got a good machine, I'm not the leader a lot of the time. The less I'm the leader, the better off theoretically it's running. We watch the metrics, we look at the things, but there's times to spring into action. And whether that is a professional need, a personal need, something's off kilter, or something just needs, a check-in, getting that real sense of where to plug yourself in most effectively for the greater good, not your own personal good, I think that can often be a big key to leadership.
When you first came on board with the Century Club and the Farmers Open, what was that moment like? What was the challenge that you were originally faced with that you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and how did that evolve, especially in the early phases?
I played to a golf tournament, and what I mean by that was we were promoting ourselves to golfers. We talked solely about golf, and our value proposition was built on golf fandom and the delivery of watching golf. We also had, the biggest blessing was also the biggest curse. We had Tiger Woods every year. So you could just put Tiger on a billboard, and once he committed, you put him up and you were cruising. And I said, we need to stop talking about golf and showing golf for two reasons. One, there's a massively broad audience out there that have disposable entertainment income, and we have a great entertainment experience, or at least we can have one out here with the ocean views and all of the space to walk around and enjoy it, and people watching, and we happen in the middle of the day. We're not a nighttime event. There's so many reasons we can speak to a broader audience. But if we just continually lead with golf and preach to the choir, we're not going to get anybody in here from outside the church. Secondly, I said, Tiger will not be here forever. And we've made him the reason to come. And we are playing with something very dangerous here of the year he can't come, or the point we reach where he's not coming anymore. We have made him the reason. And putting the number one golfer, the next number one, up on a billboard is not going to have this effect. He is a transcendent figure. So getting in a room and talking to some folks who were very golf centric about completely changing our approach to the market was a challenge. I didn't feel like it was as much of a risk, but that group definitely did because it was very foreign. I used examples of the Del Mar racetrack as one. That opening day there is not about horse racing. There's definitely horse racing fans there, but it's a lifestyle and entertainment event. I came from the Padres. As much as you'd like to think it's about winning, every sports league since the dawn of time has finished at 500. So if you think that winning is the proposition around which to build the reason to come, you're missing out. If it's diehard baseball fans, you're going to have your season ticket holders, but you're then going to probably have about 22,000 more seats to fill. And they do a great job of the food and beverage, the video board, the entertainment, family day, business day, go out with the guys day, all those different reasons to come and enjoy their entertainment experience. That was that new thinking that we had to bring to Torrey Pines. The golf fan was always going to be well served and well taken care of. We were never going to dishonor that, but we had a whole new opportunity to speak different and look different and think about things like the VIP restrooms and why aren't any women coming to this tournament and what is their number one complaint. But understand that if we ask the question, we're going to have to spend the money on upstairs restrooms, right? We're going to have to make these changes, but believe that by doing that, we will actually grow and get better. Yeah. And it took some time, had some unique conversations, had a few days where I wasn't sure if I'd come back. I had a few other days I wasn't sure if I'd get invited back. But we got through all of that and came out the other side in what we all, I think, collectively feel like is a good place and a place we got to together.
Yeah, and for what you also said before this about the importance of community involvement and what it means to be a staple in the community and to give back to the community. Can you talk about that mindset and how that is woven throughout this tournament?
Yeah, that's really the extra thing is the Century Club doesn't exist for 4 days of a tournament. We exist for 365 days of a community. Our mission statement is to make San Diego a better place from a community and charitable standpoint, in large part through the operation of the event. But in that operation, one, we're taking this event, we're putting on television on a national and international stage in a city where tourism is our third largest industry. So it's a massive commercial to drive people on a year-round basis to San Diego. Second of all, we selected certain charities, and rather than solely just talking about proceeds and holding up giant cardboard checks or just giving tickets, we're actually using those other 361 days we have free to go out and get to know these charities and take the lessons we've learned as a nonprofit in growing ourselves and improving ourselves and trying to help folks who have a great cause, just like we had a great game in golf. We had to run a small business to really make this be all it could and be very functional. Their great cause needs to have a great small business mind behind it, and helping them understand how to work with a board, how to fundraise, how to survey their own employees. I mean, just back to that question of surveying. Don't ask your employees if they're happy if you're not willing to do something about it if the answer is no. And often a nonprofit might say that all their dollars are allotted into their programs and who they're looking to serve. Well, then if you help them look at it from a business perspective on the backside, look at your employee retention issues. How much turnover, how much time and energy and resources you're spending chasing, filling holes, trying to train them, getting them up to speed. We all know it takes a while to get up to speed. It takes a while to hire. Invariably, it costs you a ton. If you would put a little bit of resource towards these things, it's actually going to gain you a lot of momentum and resource in the future. Those are the sorts of things that we're trying to go out in the community to help charities with. And from my other roles in sports, where we did great things in the community, this one's different. We're just much, much deeper. We've built a very intentional program where we went away from originally, I say we used to give fish. We would just give dollars or a few resources. We have found that teaching the fish is really where we have the time to go deeper and make these groups better. And the beauty of doing that is not only do they get better, but we can kind of graduate them on and go focus on someone new. Where if we were just giving fish, those same groups just keep coming back to us hungry. And we really don't effectuate change. We just kind of let something perpetuate.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I'm so glad you were able to elaborate on some of that. But then also you mentioned some of the consulting your work that you're doing, that you're teaching people the lessons, you're teaching them to fish, but in a different way, and all the things that you've learned in your career and putting on tournaments. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how did that get going, and how is it going? What are some of the
Yeah,
major things?
I'd say it feels more hobbyesque than business in a lot of ways. As mentioned, mentoring was a big thing, but also helping peers or others if they had questions. I don't consider myself an expert. I'd say more I've made a lot of mistakes, and if I can save you from making the mistakes I've made or mistakes I've seen made, if we can provide some insights on our experiences that my business partner and I have done there that are helpful to you, we're happy to share those. And so we were just doing that to be helpful because that's, how we're wired, and we'd like to think others would do it for us for a long time. And then just started to gain some bandwidth back as my son is off on his own professional adventures, and I just had more free time. I'm not married, so I've got that extra time on weekends and nights where I can do things, and I just got a lot of fulfillment, and a lot of the connections I was making and things I learned were actually coming back and benefiting my day job at the Century Club. It's just something I've leaned into more and more, and so going to a few different entities, events who are looking to bring one of their own. Hey, what does it look like to set up a tournament? Or, like I said, it's what's behind it, whether it's a tournament or whether it's a music festival or something in women's professional soccer. The underlying things about guest experience, about operational professionalism, those sorts of things. If we can provide value, it turned out people were asking for that and wanting that to a point where we turned it into I call it a hobby. It's a side business as well, but really at this point, it's really something I get great fulfillment in. I'm blessed at the Century Club. There's a nice balance that allows me to kind of fill this bucket, because I think we all have buckets outside of our day jobs that we look to fill in one way or another. I guess I'm masochistic enough that this does it for me. It was coaching my son's volleyball team for quite some time, but I'm getting that time back too. So that's been great, but also a really nice benefit is it's numerous examples of value it's actually brought back to my organization. I let my staff similarly find ways to fulfill themselves outside, and if it's in involvement with other events, as long as it doesn't interfere with our primary job. Oftentimes I call it professional development. These folks, whether financially growing or personally growing or professionally growing from the experience, it's helped them grow. It helps them feel fulfilled. And it's no wonder I think our 11 full-time people, we've had 8 of them for 10 or more years. These are good quality, well-rounded people, but back to those 10 things and the order of those 10 things, a lot of their feedback aligned with giving them the chance to continue to grow. They were driven people. So keeping fuel in their engine, it's allowed them to feel good about where they're at, and it's allowed them to still call the Century Club home base and keep doing their best work for us.
I think that's great for me to hear, because number one, it's cool that you experience that in your own that you have that in your own experience, but also that you're able to have that mindset or that approach and allow the people that you work with or the people that work for you to have that as well. I feel that in my own, I work in commercial real estate, but I also enjoy doing the podcast. I love building ranges. I love the networking group, the BCREM and all of these things just become this beautiful stew of experience of life.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah,
if you don't have,
there's a balance. There's a balance.
No, if you're getting or even excelling at what your day job is, because this is putting more air in your lungs. If you don't have any traditional conflicts of interest, is it? I'd rather you went home and sat on the couch until you came back the next day, or I'd rather you were out learning and flourishing and feeling stronger and coming back more energized than ever the next day. And I think it's a slightly new way of thinking. And I do think the new age of, whether it be virtual or whether it's flex hours or whatever, as we've learned, how do people work their best? There's times to be in the office together. There's times for togetherness. There's great seasonality in some of the event world, right? So there's times that you are plugged in and going, but there's other times where the seasonality gives you some bandwidth. And if you fulfill that bandwidth in whatever manner you want to appropriately do so, hey, as long as you're feeling good and you're coming in raring to go for where I need you, that's great.
That's great. That's fantastic. So before you've provided a lot of great context, some insights, and I really appreciate your time here. I'm going to include a lot of the other items that you want to share as far as the tournament and how to connect with you. I'm going to share that in the show notes. But before we leave, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? Any words of
Yeah.
wisdom, things to look forward to, whatever you want. Stage is yours.
I don't, I'll humbly not want to overstep in that space, but I think as I go on in the life journey, and whether it's things I've learned professionally or through some personal life experience, right? We're always growing. Get that self-awareness, understand who you are, understand your traits. You can learn skills. Like, what are you good at? What comes easy? What makes you who you are? And lean into those things and excel in those things and have confidence in those things, right? Be bold, go after things, and that self-belief, letting that carry on for years. Networking is easier in this day and age than it ever was, but doing it with intention. As I look at what LinkedIn can be and what it isn't, reaching out just to have someone in your network versus take 2 minutes and put a message in there. Tell them who you are, why you want to be connected, what you're about. And you know what, you're gonna build a next level relationship. And thirdly, for those of us who are further along or even in the middle or at the front of the career, mentoring the thing. And you're just building a relationship. You're getting to know somebody. I often am talking to someone younger and I learn things either through something they shared or just as I'm talking myself, I kind of come to places. It's a powerful thing. It's a valuable thing, giving that time, paying it back. When you're younger, seeking it out, you'll be surprised to find out where people will give it. So those are just a couple of the things that I'd offer to people. If they're listening to what you're sharing, Dustin, they're looking to grow. They're looking for more. They're out there. There's some curiosity in them, right? That's out there. And if you're taking the time to listen to a guy like me yarn on, that means you've got that curiosity. Keep scratching your itch. Lean in, go explore more, keep finding knowledge, keep asking questions. Believe in your journey.
Yeah. And before we take off, I just want to second that about the mentoring and how powerful it is. There's sometimes where I feel like teaching or explaining to somebody something that they have a question about, sometimes you don't realize how far you've come or how much you've learned until somebody asks you something that you just take for granted. You're like, oh yeah, just do this, and that. Sometimes like teaching is the best teacher for yourself and being able to share something with other folks.
100%. And teachers are often still learning in everything that they do. So yeah, completely agree with you on that.
Well, Marty, thank you so much. Congrats on all your success. And I know you're still learning, you're still growing, but the way that you're giving back and helping others, and as much you've helped me as well. So I'm thankful for that. So Marty, thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. Look forward to connecting here soon.